Hi everyone, thanks for clicking on the video. I'm kind of delving into an area of release aids that I'm sure just about everybody does at some stage, and there's a very high likelihood that I'm going to punch myself in the face. Obviously not intentionally, because that'd just be silly, but what I'm going to be doing today is setting up the Stan Element. Now the Element's a resistance-based release aid, which means that unlike a normal trigger where once you get to full draw, you squeeze the trigger to have it go off, you've got to hold the thumb trigger on this one because it's actually a safety that stops it from going off all the way to full draw. And then when you release that, the sear is set in such a way that at a specific amount of force that you pull onto the release aid, the sear will break and the shot will be executed. Now, you can set the Stan Element to go off at any poundage, but from what I understand, what you need to do is set it so that it's a couple of pounds over what the holding weight is when you're at full draw with your bow. And then as you squeeze your shoulders together to get that back tension going, it should pull a little bit harder than what you've currently got your let off set at, to the point where the release will break. And now, depending on how hot you want the release set, the amount of force that you need over your holding weight will determine that. So hypothetically, let's just say your holding weight on your bow is 15 pounds and you set this release aid to break at 17 pounds. That means you're not really having to put a whole lot of effort in to get the release to fire. Whereas if your holding weight is 15 pounds and you set it to go off at 20 pounds, means that your squeezing of your back muscles to get that back tension going, you're going to be putting a little bit more effort in to get the release to go off. I've never used this release aid. I bought it a while ago. It's just been sitting there waiting for this video to happen. And I've never used a tension activated release aid before in my life. So like I said, there's a very high likelihood that I'm going to punch myself in the face. So in the packaging, you've got the release aid. It's sitting there. Once again, I did buy this secondhand. Did a little video on that, buying secondhand products in one of my mail times. So if you have a look at that, there's a few tips and tricks on what to look for when you are buying secondhand sight unseen. So the manual came with it as well. And then also the person took the time to download and print out the manual for it as well. So not sure exactly why. So taking a look at the release aid itself, the quality of it, I'll bring it up close so you guys can see. The fit and finish on it is just as good as any other Stan branded release aid. As I said, this is the Element and it is a size large because I have rather large hands. One of the cool things about the Element as well, this little hole here, there's a pin in the trigger that you can take out. And if you screw it into the release aid in that hole, it stops this from being able to activate. So basically what you then have is a release aid you can use for training your draw cycle without any chance of it actually going off. So that's a pretty cool tool if you wanted to have someone who's never shot a compound bow, for example, to have a go at drawing it without accidentally letting it off and potentially sending an arrow into the ceiling, or or dry firing your bow, which we all know is not such a great idea. So I'll put the release aid in my pocket and we'll have a quick flick through the technical guide to see how I'm supposed to adjust this thing. So as with most technical guides, it's got a few, safety concerns and things you need to watch out for and all that sort of stuff. Seems like it does talk about back tension to try and give you a bit of an idea of why this works the way that it does. So it also has the instructions for the SX2 and the shoot off. but that's not what I'm after. What I'm after is the element. So it says here, the element release aid is a pull-through style release mechanism that operates by setting the activation tension to match your bow's holding weight. While it appears to be a trigger style release, the part that looks like the trigger actually serves the opposite function of a trigger. It prevents the device from firing while you come to full draw. Once at full draw, you release the knob, then begin applying back tension as defined earlier in this manual. The amount of tension required to activate the release depends on the activation tension setting you have selected. So activation tension versus firing differential. Activation tension refers to the amount of pressure required to activate the device while at full draw. If your holding weight is 30 pounds and you want to require 2 pounds of pressure to activate the release, you would set that activation tension to 32 pounds. If your holding weight is 40 pounds and you want to require 2 pounds, you'd set it to 42 pounds. So firing differential is defined as the difference between the activation tension and the holding weight of your bow, which is pretty much what I said before anyway. In both of the previous examples, the firing differential is 2 pounds. The screw identified as G in figure 3 is the adjustment screw used to alterate the activation tension and is referred to as the activation tension set screw. Turn it clockwise to make the tension required to activate the release heavier. Turn it counterclockwise to make it lighter. Alrighty. So if I can bring this up close for you guys to have a look at, if that's in focus, feel free to pause that to read it. As you can see, it's pointing there at screw G, and then the little disclaimer at the bottom says never ever adjust screw H. Alrighty, so I have my Allen keys and the release aid, and I think where I'm going to start is turning this all the way in and then slowly bringing it out. Alternatively, I suppose what I could do is grab my bow scale and see how much this is taking to activate at the moment, and then adjust that as necessary. So I might do that actually. I might go grab my bow scale and I'll be back in a minute so that we can have a look at how much pounds this needs to go off at the moment, and then we can play with the set screw backwards and forwards to see how that actually adjusts the release aid. So back in a minute. So I got my bow scale and I got the release aid. What we'll do now, hook it up and pull until it goes off and see where we are as far as the tension is concerned. That's 11, 12, 13. Looks like it's going off at about 14 pounds. So I'll see if I can get this on the camera for you guys. It's in kilograms. We need to change that to pounds. 8, 10, 11. So just over 14 pounds is where it's breaking at the moment. Now let's try and do some maths and see whether or not I can figure this out. Now my bow is set to 57 pounds with a 75% let off, which means that at full draw I should be holding, so 10% of 57 is 5.7.
1 eternity later.
So I'm pretty sure that means that at full draw, I'm holding 14.25 pounds of draw weight. Now with this thing being set slightly over 14 pounds, that means that as soon as I let go of the safety at full draw, the bow is pulling hard enough by itself that it's going to go off. Now that negates the whole point of this release aid, because you want to activate it using back tension. So what I might do is use the Allen keys and set this for 18 pounds of back tension, or 18 pounds of weight for it to actually go off, and then try and shoot an arrow with it, which is really going to be scary for me as I've never done it before. And then we can always work our way to a hotter trigger from there. So I'll grab the Allen key and we'll get all of that done. Right, so in the manual it said clockwise to make it heavier, I'm pretty sure. So we're starting, let's go 1 full turn in, like that. And then we can weigh it again on the bow scale and see where we're at. So we'll turn the scale back on again. Make sure it's in pounds. And 14, 15, 16, 19. So we're at about 19.5 pounds to set it off now. So we'll see if we can get you guys to see that on the screen again. Let's just make sure we're in pounds. So I think, in theory, we're around about where we need to be, which means now for the scary bit, actually putting an arrow in the bow, drawing back with this thing, and seeing if I can get it to go off. I'll grab my bow, I'll be back in a second. So, here we go. Now promise not to laugh if I do punch myself. So remember, finger on the safety for drawing. Make sure I'm on the target, so if anything goes wrong, finger off the safety, pull, pull, pull. That wasn't so bad. We'll give it another go, yeah? As far as the poundage required to draw it is concerned, it doesn't feel too bad. I don't know if I'd want it any hotter than that to begin with until I get used to the thing. And that's the beauty of all of these Stan and, well, pretty much any of the modern release aids that you can get now. They're completely adjustable, so you can make it as hot or as not as you want. And if you start off with it really, really cold, as you get more and more confident using the thing, you can then adjust it hotter and hotter until you find that happy place where you're executing good shots by putting in just the right amount of effort. So I'm gonna have another go. All right, finger on the safety. You know, I kind of like it. It's still a bit scary, but I kind of like it. Shoot this last arrow and see how we go. I mean, I'm still more worried about the release going off than actually having my wrist nice and flat and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So it's definitely going to be something that I got to get used to using. But in saying that, it's immediately making me use back tension. I can feel myself activating those muscles in between my shoulder blades to get my shot to go off. And I must admit, for me personally, using a trigger release, there's a lot of times where I shoot a particular shot in a round or in a comp or in practice where I don't do that. And a lot of the time, those are my shots that are going left or right of the bullseye. So As far as using the stand is concerned, the Element, it seems like it's fairly straightforward. Adjusting it, as you saw, super easy. I mean, if you can do a little bit of math and have a bow scale or something to set the trigger that way rather than just drawing the bow back and seeing how it feels, it makes sense to do it that way. You're going to be in a better spot quicker without any risk of anything going wrong. And then, of course, the most important part, never forget to hold the safety while you're drawing, because as you can imagine, that's going to be the time that when it just ramps up that little bit to get over that 18 pounds that this one is set for at the moment, that's when you're going to punch yourself in the face. But anyway, so that's pretty much what I wanted to do as far as setting this thing up is concerned. Now it's just a case of me shooting with it, practicing, and seeing if it actually does make a difference as far as improving things for myself is concerned. Hopefully, if you guys were thinking about it, this video will give you a bit of an idea of whether or not this release aid will be right for you. As I said, I will upload another video where I actually shoot for score with it, and we'll see how we go. So I'm going to call that done. I can smell the chicken on the Weber's getting pretty close to being ready. So thanks for watching. Leave a like or a comment below. Remember to click on the subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and share my videos and my channel with other people that you think might get something out of it as well. I hope you all have a great week, and remember, just do good shots.